Hi, I'm Mary Beth Dean,
I'm Jay Mather.
I'm Jacqueline Massey.
and we are going to be chatting about how to lower your personal carbon footprint. And Jay has been working
Working in the climate mitigation space for over 20 years.
Nice. And Jackie?
Well, I'm merely a citizen of the world. I am a parent. I got involved in Bowen in transition a number of years ago, and following that, I also attended training with Al Gore's Climate Reality Project.
Great. So part one, I'm going to be chatting with Jackie, and part two, I will have a conversation with Jay. So I've heard that to keep the Earth's atmosphere from rising above 2 degrees, the average annual carbon footprint of all humans is going to need to be about 1.87 tons by 2050. Now, the average Canadian at this point is about 15.7 tons. Do you have any idea why this is so high?
Yeah, it's crazy high, and in fact, I think that the global average is around 4.4 tons, so we're like 4 times worse than anywhere else in the world. So why is that? Certainly, simply Canada has experiences much longer and colder winters, so we're burning more fuel for heat. We're also a vast country geographically, so we jump in our cars and travel longer distances, again, burning fossil fuels. And yeah, certainly it all comes down to the burning of fossil fuels, both extraction, such as the tar sands, and that's also a huge contributor, and of course our own personal consumption, which we are all responsible for.
And so you've done the job of tracking your own personal carbon footprint. You're gonna give us some resources about how we can do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So as they say, you can't manage what you can't measure. So I think the very first step is to take a look at our own personal impact. And that's really simple to do nowadays because they have these online carbon footprint calculators, and basically what you do is you assemble a bunch of information about your lifestyle, so all this data, everything from where you live, how you heat your home, what you do in terms of waste management, looks at your transportation. So yeah, amalgamate all this information. Calculator does a great job of translating this into carbon dioxide emission equivalents, and then you add it all up and you get this total, and I have to say it's quite sobering to look at, but then the fun part starts, because then what you can do is put together a personal sustainability plan, and that plan will take a look at or highlight those areas where you're a heavy consumer, and allow you opportunities to set goals to reduce your overall consumption. And even if you think that you're living a generally green lifestyle, there are literally hundreds of things you can do to bring down your consumption levels.
So for you, when you went through this exercise, what were the surprises?
Surprises. Well, I was actually quite surprised by how much money we saved when we quit using our dryer. So not just in the summertime, but year round, and just letting air dry. So that was like saving about $30 or $40 a month, which I think is quite significant. Biggest change for me was probably around food. So growing my own vegetables, a lot of my own vegetables, but also really adopting a predominantly plant-based diet. And that was actually quite simple to do and quite easy to do. I also committed to not buying any new clothes for a year, which I thought would be quite challenging because I'm a pretty good little shopper. But when you discover secondhand stores, all the fun is still there. So, and I guess the thing that I did the worst on probably was in terms of transportation, trying to ditch my own vehicle for both work and when I head into the city. I haven't done so well on that, so I have to keep working on that.
I've heard the top things in general we should all do is not have more than one child. I think everyone in this room has broken that one. Cut down my flying. Have you cut down on your flying?
Oh yeah, that's because of more affordability, but yes, right. I haven't been doing a lot of flying. Yeah, for leisure anyway.
And of course, you mentioned the plant-based diet thing. For you, do you see a number one thing?
I think that it's about doing a multitude of things individually. They all add up. So I think that one thing or two things will have some impact, but generally you need to do a multitude of things. And I also just want to mention that in terms of doing your personal sustainability plan, it's really great to challenge others to do that with you. So whether it's your partner or your family or just a few friends to get together and to work that out together, it obviously provides accountability, but also just you have that important encouragement. So I think collectively that's really key to having an impact. But it's true that at this stage of the game, we're really needing transformational change, not just incremental change. So individually or singularly, what you or I can do, or any of our neighbors on Bowen, it's pretty limited. If we want to meet our Paris Agreement commitment, which by the way was signed by about 200 countries, Canada absolutely has to transition away from fossil fuels to an economy that's based on renewable resources. And so our role really is to use our voice and to put pressure on our governments and to ensure that there is policy, public policy, that there is action that's bold and immediate. And so of course we have the we have the privilege of being able to vote. We also have the power of the purse. So we can support those businesses to recognize the insanity of business as usual, staying on course and using a model that's based on unbridled growth.
So as someone who is working on this on a personal level and a community level as well, sometimes I feel like as your awareness grows, you can also get kind of down
Right.
because you're working really hard on this and you realize that there are bigger players who are not. Mm-hmm. What's your sort of philosophy or viewpoint that keeps you going?
Well, action makes me hopeful. The actions of 7.6 million people globally who participated in the climate strikes in September and give me hope. The activism of Greta Thunberg and Extinction Rebellion and the courage of the First Nations who are standing up to government, they give me hope. And it's too late for pessimism. And although climate change, the climate crisis seems like an insurmountable problem, it is one that we have caused through our own actions and choices and decisions. So that means it's one that we can change and we actually have control, and we have the technology, and we need to have the willingness and the leadership to turn around. And it's urgent. The world is burning. We know that we have about 10 years to turn the ship around. So it means that all of us have to act and take a position right now, and that position is to with hope take action.
So Jay, as someone who works in the field of clean energy and climate change, what's your approach to individual change?
It's a good question. Everything always started for me in the environmental and sustainability world from personal change. It's been about looking at the choices of how I heat and power where I live. It's how I travel. It's the food I eat. I think I transitioned off of meat 25 years ago. And that was because of environmental, but it was also ethical reasons. So, and on a personal basis, in different countries, you can do different things. In countries in Europe, it's quite easy to buy 100% of your energy from a renewable source. You can buy 100% of your gas from a renewable source. You can get access to technologies. Here in BC, we have a great grid, but that's where you don't have much choice. You can't switch different suppliers. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting what you can do. And on a personal basis, when it comes to flying, which is the single largest impact for most people, throughout my life, really focused on trying to offset, and in many cases even double or triple offset those emissions.
I mentioned earlier in my chat with Jackie that the average Canadian creates about 15.7 tons of carbon emissions every year.
Yeah.
What would your
Now, currently, if I exclude flights and for my own personal transportation, I'm probably down around 4.5 tons. But I can't do anything about the ferry, and that's our biggest CO2 emission per person on Bowen. So there's things like that that are also difficult to deal with, but I do use public transport.
So what's your number one thing you wish people would do?
That's a good question because it always varies where you are. If you're really honest and you fly a lot, offsetting is far more important than anything else you can do. If you don't fly a lot, then it's going to be about things like diet. What are you doing? Are you moving more plant-based? Are you moving away from meats and dairy? And also it's going to be about your consumption patterns. There are people who buy a copious amount of stuff. For instance, an electric car is really great for reducing your emissions if you drive a lot. If you don't drive much, switching to an electric car actually doesn't reduce your emissions any significant way. And also, if you drive hardly at all, switching to an electric car has an increase in emissions because you have to manufacture it.
Right.
So it's one of those things. It varies based on the circumstance. And if sustainability was easy, we would have done it by now. It's a complex thing. But the point that Jackie was making is there's hundreds of things we can do. And some of those things are small, reusing, repairing. Some of those things are bigger, changing your diet. Some of those things are huge, I won't fly anymore. But it's about what's appropriate. And this is not a process of individual action only. This is the aggregate. And the whole point that I've spent most of my career is working with the 5 or 10 or 15% of society that are aware of this stuff. Most of my career now is working with 60, 70% of society who isn't. Because there's no point in helping someone who's pretty good get even better. This is about taking people who are average and making them marginally better.